everyone. So today we're doing another reaction. This is Jubilee's Fat versus Fit Influencers Middle Ground. I know the reactions aren't like super popular, but I really have found that they're a nice palate cleanser in between the You're in the TikTok videos. So before we move on to our next person, I figured we would just have a nice palette cleanser of a reaction video. I'm still not sure who I'm covering next. I wanted to either be someone who I can get through in between 1 and 3 parts, or someone who's really, like, yeah, they're in the fat acceptance movement, but they're not nearly as aggressive or toxic as some of the other people that we see. So I want one of those two types, and I'm still figuring out who I will cover next. So for today, we're looking at the Fat versus Fit Influencers Middle Ground Jubilee video.
Influencer, I'm thinking like an unhealthy.
I enjoy this episode.
When I hear the term fat influencer, I'm thinking like an unhealthy standard being set. I just can't get behind being complacent.
Well, I want to say that it doesn't mean complacency.
My name's Timothea, and fitness has been a huge part of my life, and I love to share what I know about it. Overall, it's just a way of life.
My name is Tyler. I'm a fat influencer, and on my platform, I like to spread body positivity, mental health awareness, and fashion, looking good while fat.
So when I think of the word fat influencers, I think of influencers who are either promoting others to be fat in the same sense that fitness influencers promote fitness.
I don't like people that obsess over being fat, just like I don't like people that obsess over fitness. I'm in my own fitness journey, and a lot of people like it because I'm not the stereotypical dude.
The misconception.
Yeah, I have to say, I actually like that in the fit influencer category, they included someone who is not who you typically think of, because I think it's worth noting that not all fit influencers, not all people that are into fitness are necessarily going to have that like gym bod, but it's about the journey. It's about the journey of being fit. It's about the effort and the practice and the results over time that you see, and you can definitely see that a lot more with someone who didn't start out already fit. I like those creators myself, so I'm glad that they included him.
That the opposite side has of me is that I have some agenda to keep people fat, to promote obesity, to tell anybody anything about their size.
Step forward if you agree. I promote healthy standards as an influencer.
Okay, before we get into their conversation, I thought it was interesting. The fit influencers automatically, when the fat influencers had to think about it for a second. Like, they did ultimately end up moving, but I feel like it felt, just from that pause, it felt like a justification, like they need to justify what they're doing or something. So they're like, okay, no, we need to walk and show that we're not, promoting unhealthy. We're doing healthy things. I thought that was interesting.
We need to discuss what healthy means first, because healthy means many different things. So, like, what does health mean to you guys?
For me, I don't focus on diet and weight loss as a tool for health and how I communicate that. I focus on movement and finding movement that works for you, that feels good and is sustainable in your body. Because ultimately, I think everybody would agree, movement is healthy, exercise is healthy. In the fitness world, and I myself am a yoga instructor, so I kind of straddle both sides. I think there's an overemphasis on physicality and diet and exercise.
Personally, I'm a fat guy, and I've been tired of being a fat guy. And I've actually been told that my approach to it is a little bit extreme. So, I'll do like 24-hour fasts. I'll do intermediate fasting, liquid diets, things like that. Some people say it's an unhealthy habit. They say like I got an eating disorder, but at the same time, I am seeing results. I do feel like I can run faster, jump higher, walk longer. I kind of feel like when I hear the term fat influencer, I'm thinking like an unhealthy standard being set. I just can't get behind being complacent.
Well, I want to say that it doesn't mean complacency, right? So a little bit about me is that I was a three-sport athlete almost my entire life, went to college and played a sport. And then I decided, I've always been, a big person, and I was able to manipulate my weight because I also wrestled. So I would bulk up for football season, lose for wrestling, and rinse and repeat. Because of that, though, now my approach is really just about making sure that you take care of your total self. So your mind and your body, and also just making sure that you check in with, medical professionals. I work in healthcare, and so I don't tend to take advice from people who are not medical professionals.
And I would just like to speak up, we're all different. Yeah, there are fat influencers out there that have unhealthy lifestyles that share it, but that's their lifestyle. There are fat influencers that are motivational.
Before we let her finish, I do just want to comment on the fat influencer guy. I did appreciate, though, that he promoted talking with medical professionals about what you're doing. And while other fat acceptance people have kind of done that, we've also seen the opposite, where they're like, don't trust the doctors are fat phobic. So the fact that he's speaking generally and promoting including doctors into the conversation, I do like. I will give him that.
That are trying to lose weight. There are fat influencers out there that just are existing in this world and trying to make it accommodating to themselves and people that look like them. So there are so many fat people in this world, and to label them all a certain way or to put them in a category where they have to perform to make you feel comfortable is disingenuous. It's not good.
Well, that's what.
So I think that that's a little oversimplification of the overall issue. This was only put out a year ago, so we still saw plenty of fat acceptance rhetoric and fat acceptance creators during this time when this was created. And I feel like there's a portion of fat influencers, fat content creators that don't see the toxic side of their space on TikTok or social media or whatever. We saw that with Fat Fairy Principessa as well, who was like, I've never seen anyone promote, it wasn't medical misinformation. It was something about, food quality, I think. And it's like, no, there's absolutely people that promote Twinkies over fruit, or candy over protein bars. And there was this, it does happen. And I feel like that's something that's missed a little bit. And the people that promote unhealthy lifestyles, misinformation, tend to also be the loudest. And if you haven't seen them, that's great. I'm glad that you haven't been exposed to that toxic side of the internet. But it doesn't change the fact that it's still there. And they're using some legitimate issues around fatness, like doctors not believing you when something is seriously wrong. And I'm talking about, you're saying something's seriously wrong, they tell you to lose weight, you're like, no, something is, I think, seriously wrong, I need a test, whatever, turns out to be cancer, and they weren't listened to the first time. It's something that is pervasive not just with fat people. It is something that happens with those who are disabled. It's something that happens with women. It's something that happens with a variety of people. And I do stand on the side of doctors are fallible human beings, and therefore if they miss something, it's unfortunate, but they are still human. And I think that most doctors do the best they can with the information that they have at the time. But that also means that you have to be a little bit more comfortable advocating for yourself when you're like, no, I think something is seriously wrong. And then there's this line to walk between advocating for yourself medically and doctor shopping. So there's multiple parts to it. And so I think oversimplifying it as, these fat influencers shouldn't have to perform in a certain way to make people comfortable. I agree to an extent, but there's plenty of toxic fat influencers out there that do need to be called out on their shit. Same with fit influencers, quite frankly, but I think the difference is that the fit influencers that are promoting toxic behavior by most people are seen as, doing a toxic level of something. The fat influencers are defended as being body positive, or you're being fat phobic by viewing what they're doing as unhealthy. And that's where a bigger issue comes in.
Kind of upset me. That's why I started my journey at the end of the day, was because, I was depressed. I lost my job in the midst of COVID, and I'm unhappy with who I am. And then I see someone on social media that's like, it's okay to be who you are. And I was like, you're telling me that the way I feel is okay, but at the end of the day, I hate how I feel. And so it was kind of out of protest that I started this journey. And I'm damn glad I did. At the end of the day, you're doing a disservice to the people around you that care about you, whether it be close, relatives, society, etc. And to see someone use a platform like that as a fellow fat kid my entire life, it just pissed me off.
I hear what you're saying and it's valid. I've been fat my entire life. I was a fat kid, fat teenager, fat adult, just fat. And that is not my story. And I see that played out over and over and over again in the world, in art, in TV, in movies, like the sad fat trope, nobody's going to want you, and that plays into the way we treat fat people, but that is not everybody's story. So I hear that you were sad, you were unhealthy, you were uncomfortable, you were isolated, like we can all relate to that, but that is not the story of every fat person.
So I'll give it to her that that's not the story of every fat person, but that's the story of a good number of them. And so I think that it's worth exploring both sides, if that makes sense. It's worth listening without calling them fat phobic, without saying, former fat people are the most fat phobic people. Maybe learn a little bit from them. And then in return, people would be a little bit more receptive to at least some of your ideas. But this kind of, I don't know, the fat acceptance movement in general, I just feel has this holier than thou attitude. They tend to be rather arrogant and condescending, and I feel like for a lot of people, tone really puts them off. On top of some of their really out there takes, tone, I think, features highly in how they feel about some of these fat influencers, how people feel about some of these fat influencers, because on top of them doing something kind of like, oh, are you promoting obesity, whatever, I think a lot more people would turn a blind eye if a lot of fat influencers didn't also go after thinner creators and call them fat phobic for doing stuff that affects no one but them. And I will always go back to the before and after photos. Fuck off. It's if they want to track their journey like that, leave them alone. You want to be left alone because you're just existing. That's fine, but do the same thing for other people. The minute that you start criticizing and going after people doing their own damn thing on their own channel, you open yourself up for criticism as well. So I don't want to hear this, you're just existing, when you are criticizing people who are also just existing.
I am on a journey to like myself in my skin, and that is something I believe is obtainable through hard work and dedication. I mean, nothing else worked, loving yourself, quote unquote, made me eat KFC 3 times a day and gain a lot of weight and turn sedentary. Hating myself encouraged me to be different and encouraged me to change my life. And as a result, I've influenced thousands of kids younger than me's lives.
So he is, I don't know, like I've been in the loving yourself and hating yourself camps in different points in my life, and neither one worked for me. The loving yourself, I agree, just kind of gives you permission to not grow to a degree, at least when you're looking at it as I love myself because I'm perfect just the way I am. That sort of loving yourself. There's this sense of, I don't have to do anything and fuck anyone that thinks negatively of me. It's really not a helpful place to be, in my opinion. The hating yourself does give you motivation to change. I'm not gonna say that it doesn't, but it also can makes it more likely for you to take things to extremes. You'll never be satisfied with what you're doing. At least this is my experience. You'll never be satisfied with what you're trying to achieve. You'll that feeling of good enough never comes. Like, I've finally done something, I'm good enough. It never comes. I don't think hating yourself is necessarily a good answer either. For me, I've ended up looking at myself as more like a project, kind of like a character customization screen in a video game, or like those stat manipulation games where you're trying to level up stats to a certain level to get a specific ending. That's kind of how I view myself now. It's not a matter of loving or hating. It's a matter of looking at it and being like, this isn't quite what I want. And this can be for skills, this can be for aesthetic, this can be for how your body looks, this can be for literally anything. Even if I don't like the way that I react to certain things, I'm like, oh wow, I tend to get very loud. And I'll work on quieting my voice a little bit or lowering my voice, and this became a bit of an issue because I live with someone who's hard of hearing, so I ended up just naturally speaking louder, and so at my job I'm like loud now. And so trying to retrain myself to not speak quite so loudly is a current endeavor that I am undertaking. Not because there's any shame associated with being loud, but because I just don't like it. I don't like being known as the loud person. So the same thing can happen with weights, the same thing can happen with any skill, really. Let's say you don't like that you don't know how to code, so you learn how to code. I think viewing yourself as not hating yourself, not loving yourself, but viewing yourself in the character customization screen sort of thing is what worked for me. In that, this is okay, but it could be better. Sort of thing. Like you don't hate yourself. You're like, it's okay, you're okay, but you could be better. Sort of thing. That's what worked for me.
Fat shaming is worse than skinny shaming.
When you thin shame somebody, it is
So I just want a quick note for anyone who's just listening. Both of the fat influencers went to the seats, and one fit influencer, the woman, went to the seats as well to talk.
based off of aesthetic. Like, oh, you're so skinny. I wish I could be like that. I wish I could eat whatever I want and stay skinny. There are these assumptions we have about people in fat bodies that we don't place on thin people, even if they're thin beyond health. And it really makes it so that fat people are overlooked, and it creates an environment where it's okay to perpetuate hate and even violence, you know?
Being thin won't limit you from being able to shop where you want to shop. You can walk into a clothing store, get clothes right off the rack.
Sorry, how is that fat shaming exactly? We were talking about fat shaming versus skinny shaming. And I don't really see how not being able to find, that's just a consequence of your choices to eat. Like, this is not, to me, this is not fat shaming. Like, you want to talk about violence against fat people, that does happen. I would say that it also happens to skinny people, but just probably not as often. The whole clothes thing does not work as a form of fat shaming for me.
Sometimes even have excess. You could go up or down the rack. In my experience, those are not my options. I shop online because I wear a size 15 shoe, because I'm 6'2", and I have a very broad body.
The skinny shaming, there is that backhanded compliment. You see that all the time. But when it comes to the fat shaming, you just see more negative out of it. And I just, it's horrible to see.
But being fat is still taboo, believe it or not.
Yeah.
My partner and I'm a gay man, dating another fat black gay man, and we have gone viral on the internet a couple times. And you know what some of the comments were? Never seen two fat people together. I get pats on the back for posting a picture at the beach with no shirt on.
I would like your guys' opinion on this. The comments I have two things to say. The one, I've never seen two fat people together. if that's the worst comment you got, I actually think that works out pretty well for you, but I could also realize that he could just be editing and not mentioning the worst ones. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about what he's saying here, but I'd like to hear your opinions.
Why am I being patted on the back for that?
Right.
Can the disagreeer step forward?
Well, when I hear fat shaming, skinny shaming, all that stuff, I just think back to like middle school, high school, picking on kids. It's bullying. I believe everyone goes through body dysmorphia. One of my homegirls is a model, and she's always complaining how she doesn't like the way she looks, even though like 99% of all women would probably prefer they looked like her. She hates the way she looks, and she's like, I wish my boobs were bigger. I wish my butt was bigger. I believe, that's the media, that's the entertainment industry, is they have a standard of what, at the end of the day, is desired, I guess, but not everyone's built like Marilyn Monroe.
You said 99% of women would probably want to look like her. That's to me, some of the language that is the problem, is that I'm assuming that she's probably of a thinner body,
Fair.
right, because she's a model, but a lot of women don't. It's okay. Your body you are the standard. You are the model.
He's just making a point about her. I feel like that's nitpicking. Again, I want to hear your guys' opinion on this, but he said 99%, leaving that space open of women that wouldn't necessarily want to look like her. So I feel like this is a bit nitpicking to me.
Yeah.
Beauty. Like the fact that we think like that already is still what the problem is, and it's still why, to me, fat shaming is worse than the skinny shaming. Because like even our language, I know people just desire this really thin body. It's like that's the language in the language. When I get negative comments about my relationship with my partner, I kind of like to troll back. For example, if I tweet a picture of us kissing or dancing, people will spew the homophobic slurs and stuff. So I like to then just share more pictures of us kissing and really double down into it and let them know, honey, we're here to stay. The girls are not going anywhere, and just letting them know that I'm confident in myself. I'm happy, I'm in love, and I'm living my life.
Well, I actually think that that's a better way of handling it than we've seen other fat influencers handle things, because he's not addressing them directly. He's just posting more happy things in his life, showing that the trolls don't bother him, which I think is good. I think that's a fine way to handle it, better than responding to every hate comment like we've seen some of the other fat influencers do. So good for him.
I don't think I've ever been shamed for my body. I was always moving. I was always, I stayed fit my whole life. To be a fitness influencer, you have to have that image, that skinny, fit, toned look. That's really not the case. If you have the knowledge, if you have the passion to want to help people with their fitness journey, it doesn't matter. I highly believe that.
I feel pressure to look a certain way for my followers.
So the heavier fit influencer was the one that walked into the center, and he's the only one.
Yeah, I started. I'm a fat kid losing weight, man. I got an expectation to uphold. I get people all the time, haters, that are like, oh, he's gonna quit, crash diet, blah blah blah. But then, there's kids that tell me, you got me out of bed today. You're the best person on the internet. Like, I love you. If I can motivate someone, one person a day, to do something, to better themselves, I'm going to do everything in my power to keep myself going. And that means not quitting. And that means looking a certain way, always developing, always growing. And, because if I quit, I'm letting down thousands of people.
I used to feel a lot of pressure, but I think with practice, you get over those pressures, you learn how to deal with it and understand that the pressure is really from yourself. It's internalized. Like you're thinking about what others think of you when in reality they could care less. They don't even see the little things.
That's exactly it. I think we should stop worrying about what other people think.
But it's so hard. I mean, like I could say that every day, and
It is.
I still think about what people think.
It is. We all do. We all do. But that's something that is a good challenge for all of us. You know, that's something that we need to you really just try. And once we get on that road, it's not easy. We're going to have days where we're just going to be like, oh, he thinks, I think. But if we can get past that, even just a little bit, it's just going to make our lives even easier. You know, just stop worrying about other people. Worry about yourself. Yeah.
I also just feel like, like everybody else, this is my account and you are a guest here, I have had to learn to not be that way. So, and for Nick, I understand that, your social media and your journey is very different. Like, I could clearly see how people or your following would have those expectations for you to continue to lose the weight. It's like, okay, well, we joined this guy so that we could join his journey on his weight loss. So we only want to see him doing the weight loss. Like, you better not plateau or gain. I could definitely see that.
Well, it's a sense of accountability, and it really helps me keep my shit going. Otherwise, I would have dropped out a long time ago, to be honest. And I don't do this is how to do a curl and things like that. I just do how I feel. I sort of have a self-deprecating outlook on myself and how I feel, and it's sort of like
Actually, I think I understand him a bit here about the accountability thing and having to kind of broadcast your journey to other people does help you stay on track where you would have fallen off before. I've stagnated a lot in the past year. I lost pretty steadily for 6 months, and then I have plateaued for the last year-ish. I guess I did lose an additional 5 pounds in that year, but still, it's been really slow. And by now, I would have probably thrown up my hands and stopped trying anything. But because I tell you guys my weight almost every week, and because I'm running this account, I feel more of a need to not fall back into bad habits of bad eating and not exercising and all of that. It does help you stay on track some, and I don't feel pressure to do it. This, at least not I need to maintain a certain look because I don't show myself on camera, but being able to report to you guys what I've done every week and that sort of thing does help with the accountability. I understand where he's coming from there.
a military style thing, you're trash, you will never be good, just give up type thing to myself.
I think that's interesting that you say that because the content that I post is not just for people. It's mostly for me, and it's part of my own. It's cathartic to see myself in sweating, trying to do a headstand and falling, or looking glam for an event, and and everything between. So being authentic and showing up as I am, whether people like it or not, or expecting it or not, is an exercise in self-love. It helps me accept myself. I was really shy as a kid and also, overweight or fat. I think the misconception is that I wasn't intelligent and that I was lazy. That's a lot of the bullying I got, right? Yeah, I don't think I dealt with it well. It wasn't until later in life where I started to kind of reject that narrative.
Weight loss programs are toxic.
Everyone moved to the center on this one, which surprises me just a little bit, but I also understand it because weight loss programs tend to be the very kitschy, trendy ones that aren't very sustainable. So I understand why everyone would sit down on this one.
Fitness promoters are promoting these weight loss programs or these diets that aren't working for everyone. And it's kind of sad to see because it's really affecting people and the way they see fitness and health, and it's toxic.
I think, and the focus is always, or it seems to be just lose the weight, just lose the weight, just lose the weight, and then you'll be happy and everything will be okay and you'll feel good and you'll fit into that. But it's whoa, I can lose all that weight and I could still be miserable.
Personally, in my journey, one of my biggest points is I do not use a scale because goals to me are limitations. And when you hit that goal, you get comfortable, aka complacent. You're I'm going to lose 10 pounds and then I'm good. And so I don't focus on the weight. I focus on everything else. I focus on, getting out of bed, that routine of going to the gym, the routine of eating healthy, that normal feeling of a caloric deficit and things like that.
That's a good way to do it too. I'm a fitness trainer too, and I tell my clients, I'm like, the scale really doesn't tell you much. You're going to fluctuate. It's water weight. It's a lot to it. You got to look at yourself in the mirror. You got to see those physical changes.
I don't even think it's the physical changes, because I'm gonna be straight up. I probably had body dysmorphia for a little bit, and I would always like check myself in the mirror. You know, like after eating, I would check myself because I wanted to keep a six-pack because the fitness industry told me that I needed a six-pack. You hear fitness influencer, and like the first thing you think is like weight loss program, selling a course. And I purposely wore this shirt this morning just to see like if there would be any extra bias. One thing I noticed about fitness, being in this space for so long, is that just because you're into fitness doesn't mean you're into health.
Well, that's interesting. Just because you're into fitness doesn't mean you're into health. That's I think it's true too, but that's interesting. I'm a little disappointed though that no one really talked about the weight loss programs themselves. They talked about the optics of weight loss and social pressures and all of that, but for me the issue with weight loss programs is that they promote unsustainable changes that are meant to be temporary, like the fucking juice cleanses and the Atkins diet and paleo and keto. And while some people do those and those are sustainable for them, for the vast majority of people they're not really. And weight loss programs don't encourage baby steps. They encourage like whole changes that are really hard to stick to. And so it doesn't really promote lifestyle changes that are sustainable and that can stay with a person and would ultimately help their health. It promotes these broad changes that may not be healthy, certainly are not sustainable, and it demonizes, a lot of them demonize, or at the very least there's a sense of shame associated with not being able to live up to the weight loss program standards when those standards were unsustainable to begin with. That's my issue with weight loss programs.
I told everyone that I dealt with body dysmorphia, and I think in terms of dealing with it, it's just learning that my value is not completely tied to my appearance. There's so many other things that I can see value in myself now. I really do enjoy the autonomy I have over my own health and my own wellness.
I have suffered from eating disorders.
Okay, so it looks like everyone came to the center this time.
I didn't realize it until a couple years after, but I was tracking like every food. I did track calories, macros. Man, I had my scale and I would bring it like to the college's dining hall. I would like weigh everything. And it would get to the point where I would either eat before going out, like if I knew my friends were going to go out to eat, I would eat at home so I could measure all the food out, put it into MyFitnessPal, and then go out and not eat with them. Or I would probably just not go out at all.
Food and fitness really took over my life for a few years. I was super, super obsessed with just, getting that goal weight or looking good and everything like that. And I found myself just super depressed. And I, didn't eat the foods I wanted to eat. And I over-exercised and I wasn't myself. It was just a horrible point in my life. And I had to go see a doctor. I had to get that help. Mentally, I wasn't there. So these things are real. Like, this stuff happens and people don't reach out enough.
The last time I had really restricted my eating, I needed to lose like almost 30 pounds in like 11 days. And I did that. And I stepped on the wrestling mat and I had absolutely no strength. I had no energy, no strength. I got whooped. I got tossed up and down the mat. And then after that, I told myself that I would never do it again. But of course, out of bad habits, I just picked up another bad habit and then began to enjoy binge eating. And then it was like, okay, well, now I'm not restricting anything and now everything goes.
And how are you now?
Now I'm much better. Therapy, medication, everyday practicing.
I do love that we got to see someone that experienced both ends of the spectrum. This is severe restricting as well as the binge eating, and the acknowledgement that both of those are eating disorders. I got to give it to him for this one. This is the bigger male fat influencer, and he I gotta give it to him. I gotta give it to him for acknowledging that both of those are eating disorders, bringing them both to the table in this discussion. Props to him.
You know, doing the right kinds of things. I'm much better now.
I suffered from an eating disorder. I had childhood trauma, and it took me until my adulthood to realize I was pacifying with food, and that's something that was taught to me. And then on the other end of that, with extreme dieting, like I did the HCG protocol where you eat 500 calories a day and give yourself an injection for months on end. And so I have done the full spectrum.
The 500 calorie diet, was that something with like a medical professional that they recommended?
Yeah,
I mean, how was that? Like,
it was traumatic. It drove me into a spiral. Like, I can relate to what you're saying about like bringing your scale and eating before you went out with your friends, because that was me. It's really, it's taken so much time for me to get to a point to even.
Okay, so I was really skeptical of the fat influencers, but I do like that they both acknowledged both ends of the spectrum. The pacifying yourself with food, emotional eating being a negative thing, binge eating, then on the other side of the spectrum, the very restrictive eating. I gotta give it to them on this one. I like that they acknowledge both.
Even know what I like to eat. And it took me until like 25, 30 to even realize, okay, I don't actually like eating that. I actually don't like this. I like this. And it's been really healing to like reclaim my relationship with food and to say like, okay, this is what I like and this is what makes me feel really good.
as a fitness influencer, what are some things I can do that helps out the other side, which would be fat influencers? What are like certain things that you guys promote that you could see me promoting?
Really want people to stop looking at fat people and all of a sudden becoming medical professionals and telling me about high blood pressure and diabetes, because again, you're not a medical professional, right? Let's let the fat people do the mukbangs too, you know? Like, if you want to do one, that is so cool. But if a fat person wants to do one, let us just do it in peace. You know, that would be my takeaway.
Honestly, I think the fat influencers doing mukbangs was partially ruined not just because they're fat, but because of people like Nikocado Avocado and Amberlynn Reed, given that they are both such, like, Amberlynn, I think, is just herself, and she's herself a toxic person. Nikocado, I think, is very much has been playing a character for a number of years. I think maybe he let it consume him a little bit, but it's this whole outlandish thing that, unfortunately, because they are two of the most well-known, most visible people that are kind of train wrecks in their own right to watch, I think that became overgeneralized to fat people. That's just my opinion, but that's how I got introduced to mukbangs, was through watching Amberlynn Reed reactors and Nikocado reactors. And that's how I learned what a mukbang was. And so I think that plays a role, unfortunately. And unfortunately for them, I'm not a fan of mukbangs for anyone, just for the record. I don't think that eating massive amounts of food in one sitting I don't even like Thanksgiving that much, in the concept of you eat until you're bursting. I've never really liked that concept. It's not that I have never indulged in that sort of eating, but it's definitely, I don't think that type of eating for anyone is good for you. And I just don't like it.
Because you never know what we're doing behind the scenes. You don't know how many therapists, how many doctors, dietitians. You have no idea how many things that we've had.
I want to know a little bit more about the beauty standard on, we're in 2021 and it's not like back in the day now. Are we making the right direction? Is that good?
I think it's reactive. It's good. Visibility is important. I've talked about this before earlier. I think that we all deserve to be represented, no matter what we look like, no matter what the status of our health. We should all see ourselves in the world. So I think, there is progress being made. There are brands that are making sizes that more people can wear. Mm-hmm. We are seeing body diversity on magazines and things like that. But it's very reactive, and it's very tied into commerce and marketing. Yeah. So is it real? I don't know. But It's part of our culture, and it's slowly shifting for whatever reason, like regardless. It will eventually have an impact on society as a whole. So yes and no.
Is it going to promote people to think it's okay to be overweight?
Here's the thing, people have been fat since people have existed.
Yeah.
I don't think that showing us as we are is going to have a negative impact. We are here. We have always been here. You can go to the Louvre and see sculptures of fat people. Fat people have always been around.
Being a fitness influencer, it's good to see that perspective from everyone too. We all have our differences, but as long as we stay on the path that we want to stay on, healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, we're going to be okay. And it's okay to get help. It always is okay to get help.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, on the note of fat people have always been around, I agree. Obesity dates back to, at the very least, ancient Greece, since I believe obesity was originally a Greek word. Even Hippocrates, I mean, way back in ancient Greece, even Hippocrates was like, you know, excessive weight isn't good for you. It's not that I necessarily have a I don't know how I feel about the whole representation thing. It's not that I hate it or I think it kind of entirely depends on how it's depicted and how it's presented, whether it would be like promoting obesity or whether this is just someone's life. So I don't really know how I feel about that one. Let me know your comments down below what you think. Overall, this seemed like a surprisingly